let's answer some of your questions. So what I did is I took and I screen capped every question I could find from you wonderful people, put all those questions in Windows Media Player, the pictures with the questions, the screen caps with the questions, and shuffled them 4 times. To be sort of impartial, to show that I'm not being a favoritist. A couple of the questions are 2-part questions, so if one of those comes up, I'm going to answer the first part first, then the second part. That out of the way, let's get this done. Cyanide Butterfly asks, and also remarks, "Hey, congrats on the 1K, keep the vids coming. And for the Q&A, what are your favorite bands?" That's a fun question. So I grew up in the 2000s, I think they're called the aughts, and because of that my musical taste is inclined towards progressive metal or progressive rock. Like, I have some CDs up here. There's The Black Market, which is one of my favorite albums ever. You should listen to it. There is Dark Before Dawn by Breaking Benjamin, which is okay. And there is Ember by Breaking Benjamin, which is significantly better than Dark Before Dawn. I also have a couple albums from Disturbed, like physical copies of the albums from Disturbed and Tool, although I don't listen to the Tool albums anymore, not since it came out that Maynard is a serial rapist. I also, because that's what I listened to when I was young, like a lot of 80s music. Like The Police. This is kind of funny. One of my favorite bands is The Police, the band from the 80s. So if I ever say that I like The Police, I'm referring to the band, not the racist organization. But yeah, like Chevelle, Mudvayne, Slipknot, Stone Sour I actually like more than Slipknot. I think that Taylor's solo efforts, or House of Golden Bones, is one of my favorite albums ever, also. I also like punk rock. It's really simple and usually has a really simple message. The Offspring is really good, or their early stuff is really good. I like some of their later stuff too. Go on YouTube and look up Dividing by Zero, if you'd like. Bad Religion is also very good. Look them up. I think the big song everyone knows by them is Sorrow, but Kyoto Now is one of my favorite songs. In fact, on that topic, if I had to list off some of my favorite songs, it would be like, Art by Taproot, Sudden Life by Rise Against, Fallen to Sleep by Mudvayne, So Cold by Breaking Benjamin, Kyoto Now by Bad Religion, as I said, Message in a Bottle by The Police. That's just, you can't help but tap your foot to it. Ooh, one other thing, I also listen to soundtrack music sometimes if the soundtrack to something is really good. Like the soundtrack to Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Well, both Full Metal Alchemists, but Brotherhood especially is just fucking banging. Oh, and because I like Dark Souls, I listen to The Aviators a lot. I'm basic. And Anon on Curious Cat asks, do you read theory? A minor caveat for all of these Curious Cat questions. I'm not just answering them here, I also answer them as they come in, so this answer is already up. And the answer to this question is not as much as I would like, but I'm trying to get better at that. There's a channel called Audible Anarchist, who, so there's this channel called Audible Anarchist, where they read off old anarchist texts. So what I've been doing is listening to these old books while playing, like, Dark Souls on my computer. I used to do that while doing opposition research, although I wouldn't specifically be playing Dark Souls. Sometimes I'd be playing, like, Armored Core, sometimes I'd be playing White Knight Chronicles, sometimes I'd be playing Dynasty Warriors. I fucking love Dynasty Warriors. Why didn't any of you ask what video games I like? Dirk Selby asks, Ron, do you watch Bo from the First Column? First minor gripe, I think it's Bo of the Fifth Column, not Bo from the First Column. I'm gonna double check that in post, but I think that's the case. But the answer to that is yes! Yes, I do. Actually, the videos where I sit by the staircase and rant at the camera for like 5-10 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time, half an hour on one occasion where I didn't actually post it online because it was really bad, those were inspired by Bo's videos. I think I decided that, you know, I'm informed enough to ramble about something a little bit and make a point. If I keep that point in mind, I don't I don't think Bo is on my recommended list for a very specific reason. I'll get into that when I start recommending channels to you, but you should all go pay attention to Bo. He put a really good video out today about how keeping ethnic minorities happy is vital for national security. Like, he has insights that they're just razor keen. Just definitely worth paying attention to. Radical Reviewer asks 3 questions. First question. Is it okay to ask my question here in the comments? Yes, it is. You may. Second is, what are some of your favorite YouTube channels? So, favorite YouTube channels are different than recommended YouTube channels. Like, if you're asking my favorites, that's going to be like the places I go to be entertained. So, like, my favorite YouTube channel on YouTube is probably Jim Sterling. Like, I've been following Jim Sterling since he was on The Escapist, since he got started on The Escapist. Well, maybe not got started, but the first video of his that I watched was his video on The Escapist about Dynasty Warriors, because I fucking love Dynasty Warriors, and I love it when people defend Dynasty Warriors. I want to do a video on that because I don't think he did a very good job of defending Dynasty Warriors. He gave his opinion on it, but I have a radically different opinion than he does. Another one of my favorite people on YouTube is VatiVidya. Just because I love Dark Souls and I love the lore of these games so much. I disagree with a lot of the assumptions that he makes, a lot of the conclusions that he's come to. But that doesn't mean that listening to those things is not entertaining. And it can be informative at times too. Some others that I can think of off the top of my head are Cody Johnson's channel, Some More News, Nash's channel, Radio Dead Air. Antisocial Media has been one of my favorite YouTube channels for a long time, since I found them. I think he deserves much more subscriptions than he has. Like, he only has, like, 3,500. He's on the list of recommendations that I'm going to give. And, of course, there are people like Peter Coffin and PhilosophyTube who, like, are just incredibly informative and incredibly entertaining as well. Of course, again, all that being said, me talking about my favorite YouTube channels is entirely removed from me talking about channels that I would recommend. I'm going to recommend some channels at the back part of the video, but yeah. Those are the channels I watch for fun. 3. Big question. Sure, we should punch Nazis, but what do we do about the institutional Nazis? The police and the military and such? Back in the day, the IWW could somewhat stand up to the company goons and the Pinkertons and the National Guard and such, but these days, with armored vehicles, drones, thermal tech, face non-recognition tech, and the overwhelming military police industrial complex, how do we stand up to justice against them? That's a big question. So I need to bring up some caveats. Like, the president can't exactly send in the army to the US or the navy to the US, except on, like, certain very specific occasions. And more importantly, like, the army and the navy and the air force has no military authority within the US. The National Guard does, but that's not the same thing. So, like, if, let's say, Donald Trump sends the army in somewhere and the army starts slaughtering people en masse, then every one of those soldiers that participated in that slaughter is going to be court-martialed, because they have no military authority in the United States. That's a basic thing. That's like a basic protection that the American people have against the United States as a government. Now, the National Guard could, and has in the past, look up the Kent State Massacre, fired on civilians and fired into crowds, but the image problems that they still have from those things. There are people who are still alive who were there at Kent State and still haven't forgiven the National Guard for what they did, and rightly so. The top brass in these organizations, in the Army, in the Navy, in the Marines, in the Air Force, and in the National Guard, are going to see it as vital that the American people trust them. So I would find it incredibly unlikely that they would respond to an order that not just Trump, but any president, any person in a position of authority gave to suppress the American people. There's another thing, too, and this is me speaking in my capacity as someone who comes from a family of soldiers. Soldiers don't like shooting civilians, for the most part. Like, my grandpa had this story that he told twice in all the time that I knew him about one of his superior officers, probably during Vietnam, ordering a group of soldiers to fire on a village of civilians and mysteriously getting shot in the back of the head. That's something that happened especially during Vietnam quite a bit. Part of it is that those superior officers were almost universally blindingly incompetent. But most of it is that soldiers don't like shooting civilians. Soldiers don't like shooting soldiers, but they especially don't like shooting civilians because they can't justify that shit. So if someone orders a military invasion of the United States, that's going to go very badly for the person who made that order. Full stop. But that doesn't answer the question of what to do about the police, does it? That's a much more difficult question, honestly. I mean, my default answer to that is to antagonize the police as much as possible at every opportunity you have to do so, but that's something I have the privilege to do, because no cop is going to try to arrest me. I don't like saying this, but this is going to come down to legislation. What you're going to want to do is, not on a federal level, but on a state level, find state-level representatives and tell them you live in terror of the police, that you've seen Chicago PD, that you've seen Zero Dark 30, that you grew up watching 24 and you know what these people do. And the reason that you get in touch with the local representatives or state representatives is because on a federal level, those people fucking, as long as Mitch McConnell is in power in fucking Washington, then nothing is ever going to get done. And also, local politicians have a much greater, local politicians have a much greater chance of listening to you. Not universal. My local state rep is a guy named Darren LaHood, and he hasn't had a town hall in like 7 fucking years, but the chance is much greater. I feel like that's not really an answer, but that's the best answer that I can give. It's not a fun situation. As far as like the face recognition tech goes, I hear that Juggalo Paint takes care of that really well, so maybe do that. Jonathan Schweiss? Jonathan Schweiss asks, what do you mean you're not smart? In what capacity? I think you are a prime example of how IQ fails to measure intelligence. Not that I think intelligence is really measurable anyway. So what had happened is when I was in 5th grade, they gave me an IQ test. And on that IQ test, I scored 63, which I was frequently reminded was roughly the IQ of a gorilla. This was a very serious thing. They sent me to a special school and everything. I stayed there for, like, 5.5 years. They didn't send me back to my regular school until halfway through my junior year. So I literally have a measured intelligence of 63. And to put that in context, like, Forrest Gump's IQ was about 83. And honestly, it's just something I like to bring up. It's just a fun fact. It's something... It amuses me more than anything. So, to answer your question more succinctly, when I say I am not smart, I specifically mean that in 5th grade, when it matters most, I scored very poorly on an IQ test. Low enough that they fucking told me I was a gorilla. That wasn't fun. School was not fun for me. School was very not fun for me. I didn't have a fun childhood. Natemi claims that I should start a channel Discord server. Also, nice job on 1,000 subscribers. So, I'm actually a moderator on a number of different Discord servers. Depending on how you judge a Discord server, whether it's like has to be reasonably active or dead, I'm a mod on between 10 and 16 different servers. And I don't think I have enough very active subscribers, enough very active people in my videos to justify having an entire Discord server. As I said in my update video, you can go to other Discord servers. You can go to ThoughtSlime's Discord server, you can go to Non-Compete's Discord server, you can go to Reeducation's Discord server, you can go to Christopher Sabo's Discord server. I'm on all of those places, and if you want to ask me things, just ping me. I'm a mod on, well, I'm not a mod on Non-Compete's Discord server, but the other 3 I am. And my username is Ron with an I next to it. Because of this thing. I made this myself, like 3 years ago. Why didn't anyone ask me about this thing? Maybe I'll have setting up a Discord server be like a goal for, like, reaching a certain number of subscribers or something. I don't know, I'm still mulling that over in my head. But I will remember that that is something that you are interested in having. Natemi. An anonymous person on Curious Cat asks, when it comes to dealing with right-wing relatives, do you have any advice for managing to get the upper hand in a discussion without causing some sort of tantrum? Whether it's shouting you down and getting away with it by some moral platitude, or just staying calm and making an argument of incredulity that you can't call out without looking frustrated in some way. Which of course makes you the emotional snowflake. Now they asked a follow-up question saying that they needed to clarify a bit. They haven't been treating their family like combatants, and they haven't been dunking on them. When these discussions happen, the anonymous person always runs into a wall when explaining that they're being taken advantage of, the person that they're talking to. They say, I think it's partly because I'm the youngest in my family, but I simply haven't been able to convince them that leftists have actual values or morals. They agree with me that rich capitalists can get away with murder and that it's wrong, but I can't seem to convince them that it's possible to do better, or that we as a society should do better. So I think I should have worded my question differently. I think I have to start with convincing them not to assume bad faith of anything that isn't Fox News or a specifically evangelical network. Is it alright to ask for advice on that? So I made a video about how to engage with certain kinds of people if you think you have the willpower to do that. That is my video, I think it's called White Working Class Validation. And the point that I make is that a lot of these people feel like they've been taken advantage of by both parties. A general piece of advice that I would give is to not be critical of the person, but be critical of the things that they say. Separate the things that they're saying from the person themselves. Like an example is, instead of saying that a person is wrong about a claim, tell them that they were lied to by someone. I'm going to go into this a little bit in my next scripted video, the one about how fake anarchist capitalists don't understand logic itself. But there's a problem in our society where people see being right as part of their identity. And they see being told that they're not right as a personal affront. Peter Coffin actually talks about this a lot. Go check out his videos on, what were they? There's one on horseshoe theory, and there's one about perpetual correctness. Both of those talk about this, about that topic. But just be compassionate. Try to listen to what they're actually saying. Like, there are very real concerns that people have. It's just that sometimes, a lot of the time, these concerns are masked by racist or sexist or fucking other kinds of bigoted rhetoric. Like, for example, people aren't concerned about immigration because they think immigration is bad. People are generally concerned about immigration because they understand that jobs are hard to find and they don't want to make it harder. Also, something fun you can do, you can still be on the left, but refer to liberals as spineless weasels and flip-floppy cretins. Liberals are not leftists. Liberals are people kind of in the middle. There's a distinction between those two things. And people who are on the far right, people who are in that sort of thing, will respond positively to that. And you don't have to feel bad about it, because fuck liberals. Fuck them. They're not helping. They're not helping at all. You know who the liberals are helping? They're helping the fucking fascists. An anonymous user on Curious Cat asks, ever considered collaborating with other leftist YouTubers? Yes, and I do, from time to time. I used to collaborate a lot more with a specific group of people, but they kind of broke up. Everyone had to go and do different things. I am going to, and by the time this video comes up, I will have made a list of videos that I collaborated with other people on, whether it be with performance or with writing. I used to help a lot with writing, actually. I probably won't be able to get all of them. I think some of them are just not there anymore, but I'll get as many as I can. Woolahan Comedy says, thanks, Ron. I hadn't heard the capitalism between a moth and a tree. Ha! That's hilarious. At 8:38, while I agree that self-determination is vitally important, what is best for them depends fairly heavily on how you define best, which is a philosophical Gordian knot to get people to agree on. Recent experiments in direct monetary aid, giving families a little extra cash for them to start a small business or to get some education, whatever turns out to be very effective, if you're measuring on the basis of them becoming economically stable, is best. If you measure on the basis of them being happy or feeling fulfilled, on the other hand, studies show that we as a species are pretty terrible at predicting what's going to make us feel happy or fulfilled. In fact, that we are so terrible at predicting that is something that capitalism has been super effective at exploiting for decades, if not centuries. Right now, for example, social media have convinced us all to spend large amounts of time on social media for the financial gain of the owners of these platforms, and it turns out that there's decent evidence that the more time we spend on these platforms, while we perceive it as a source of happiness and fulfillment, has the opposite effect. The more we're on them, the less happy we are, for the most part. There's another question related to this that I'm going to go into greater depth on, but when I say that people know what is best for them, I typically mean that people know what they need. Not what they want, what they need. Capitalism is very good at telling people what they want, at convincing people to want something, and even convincing people that why they want something, but you can't really tell someone what they need. Because only they know what they need. Only they know what is going to be the most beneficial to them. And people being happy, like, I'm not talking about people being happy. Happiness is another thing entirely, and is always nebulous, and is always fucking a Gordian knot. I suppose it would be appropriate to think of me as like a negative utilitarianist. Like, I don't want people to be more happy. I want people to be less unhappy. And I think that we can make people less unhappy. Also, Woo Hooligan Comedy has a YouTube channel that he's been posting on very frequently. His content's reasonably entertaining. Go check that out if you think you might like it. Mordecai, the Third Eye, over on Curious Cat, asks, how do you feel about creating a new, open-source social media platform funded by tax dollars on a locally controlled public broadband and integrated with a mandatory liquid democratic voting system that allows direct votes on specific policies while also allowing yourself to give a vote to someone you'd think more educated than you on a given matter? There's a lot more nuance to exactly what I'm asking, but this is a gist. Haha. So I already answered this on Curious Cat, but like, as I am with any sort of socialist or communist policy, I'm of two minds on this. On the one hand, I want to support any sort of socialist or even communist policy because we're not going to get rid of capitalism unless we show people that socialism and communism have better alternatives to the thing that they already have. And something like a new media platform would be a great example of how to do that. It will be, if you could get it up and running and off the ground, that would be a great thing for the fight, I guess, for the cause as a whole. On the other hand, you've got to be really wary of capitalism, and not just absorbing it into itself, co-opting the thing that you made, but sabotaging it if you can't co-opt it. That happens all the fucking time. There are all kinds of startups. There are all kinds of things that are waylaid by the wayside that have just been destroyed by capitalism, cutting off essential resources that, like, and you can't account for every single resource, but the capitalists can. They're very good at that. If we're talking about a media platform, that brings up an additional gripe. Like, if it's something like Facebook or like Twitter, then like, you've got Mastodon for that, and Mastodon works pretty well, even if it has kind of shitty people on it some of the time, I'm to understand. But if you're talking about something like YouTube, just getting a startup to have enough server space to even reasonably compete with them is a no-go, unless you own a fucking factory for that shit. Hosting video content takes a lot of money. Every startup, at least every startup that I'm aware of, has failed, and most of them have failed because they weren't able to store enough video content. Not even Facebook can compete with Google for, like, how YouTube works. YouTube has a monopoly on the video content sphere, I guess, because they're the only people that can afford the server space to put all that video content in. Like, the monopoly doesn't exist because there aren't people who want to make better alternatives. That monopoly exists because there's no other way to... You need to have had the infrastructure for fucking years to be able to compete with YouTube, and nobody else has had the infrastructure for years. But goddamn, it would be nice. I would like it. So yeah, I can't make up my mind, I guess. Whiskers Scuttlebum asks, how tall are you, my dudo? You look like 50 feet tall, at least. I am just a hair under 6 feet tall. And when I walk around at home, I walk around on my tippy toes. That's something related to being autistic. So I look like 1.5 inches taller than I really am. If you see me, like, walking around in my house. Which you wouldn't, because you don't know where I live. You're not peeking in my windows. I don't even have windows. I live in a basement. Terry Weaver asks, do you live in a bunker? No, I live in a friend's basement. I was living with my parents until my dad kicked me out because I lost one of his puppies. Well, lost. It ran off. All of his puppies ran off, and I just couldn't find one of them. So I was living with a different friend for a little while. Then I came and moved in here in Springfield because I assumed there would be better job opportunities. There wasn't. It's all very unfortunate. But I'm happy here. It's nice here. It's cozy. And you have shelves where you can put things. Also, my other friend didn't have... He lived in a trailer, so, like... At the time, he lived in a trailer, so, like, I didn't have any privacy. I was just... crashing on their couch. I have an actual room with a shower and a toilet and everything here, so that's nice. Jonathan Schweiss asks, can you elaborate more on people aren't stupid, they know when they're being fooled, they know when they're being taken advantage of, and most of the time, they know who's doing it. I think I know what you mean, but I'm not sure. I feel like there's this misconception in human history where people have prided themselves on being able to fool people, on being able to deceive people. People aren't easy to deceive, especially over very long periods of time. Like, you can tell a person a fib and they'll believe it, but if you tell them a different fib on 2 occasions to explain the same thing, they're going to immediately become suspicious. And the thing is, in a modern political landscape, you have all these different people telling all these different stories to give all these people different reasons to do different things. My contention would be that none of that matters, or that it matters very little. Ultimately, people care about problems that affect them. If you go and you talk to farmers, they care about getting their crops subsidized and getting their crops sold to people who can pay for them, and not being egged out by huge corporations that have been buying farmland for decades. If you talk to shop owners, they worry about attracting customers. They worry about where their stock is going to come from. They worry about not getting bought out by gigantic fucking corporations that have been buying out little shops like theirs for decades now. People tend to know what is causing them problems at any given time, with any given problem. And if you talk to them enough, they will point you in the direction of that thing. Because people aren't stupid. They know when they're being taken advantage of, they know when they're being fooled, and most of the time they know who's doing it. The problem that we're seeing now is that people aren't quite where they need to be on who is doing the thing. Some of them think that the Democrats are doing the thing. Some of them think that the immigrants are doing the thing. There are a lot of people who still have a lot of really bad feelings about 9/11 who think that the Muslims are doing the thing. But deep down, most of these people understand on some level that the direct cause of most of their problems is capital. If you go out and ask someone, what's the cause of most of your problems, they're going to say, I can't pay my bills, or I can't pay for food, or I'm worried that this guy is going to buy out my thing that I've had in my family for 3 or 4 generations, and there isn't going to be anything I can do about it. They're going to understand that the source of their problems is money. Capital. And that's when you can offer them a solution to that. Hojin asks, is your family as straight edge as you? No, and I wouldn't describe myself as straight edge. The straight edge is a philosophical thing as much as it is, like, not partaking in things. Straight edge people, in my experience, don't just not do the thing, they don't just not drink, they don't just not do drugs. They kind of sneer at people who do partake in any of that. And they're very, very enthusiastic about crafting laws to make those things illegal. I do not partake in alcohol or drugs because I don't want to, not necessarily. Every drug that I've partaken in, including alcohol, has had incredibly negative effects on me. Alcohol makes me very, very, very angry, and marijuana gives me cluster migraines. Also, I am very much not in favor of legalizing those things, and have personally advocated at the state capitol for the recreational use of marijuana to be legalized. So I wouldn't describe myself as a straight edge, and I don't think I'd describe anyone in my family as a straight edge either. 2. It's getting hot outside. Does the dungeon you live in have AC? I mean, I don't live in a dungeon, I live in a basement. It's always about 10 degrees cooler in here than it is outside at any given day. And I have a big fan over there that I have if I need it. Question number 3. Aren't you the rugged Midwesterner? Why did you change your channel name? So what had happened is you need to input a name in order to get a Gmail account active. And you can't undo that name. Or you can, but only one time, or only not very often. So I'm stuck with this name for the time being. I think that there are settings if you get enough, if you're a YouTube partner, you can change the name of your channel to, like, a brand, but I don't have the YouTube partner authorization just yet. So, Harpoon Lobotomy asks, do you have creative hobbies beyond YouTube? A favorite book? Politics, or philosophy, or fiction? Someone else very specifically asked me about my favorite books, and I'm going to elaborate on that then. But, I do have other hobbies, yes. I play a lot of video games. My controller's right here. I play very good video games, typically. I have Dark Souls on my computer. I have... that's a remastered version, because... people who everybody I saw complaining about the remastered version are people who already had the Prepare to Die version and a bunch of mods that make it run better. I don't have that, so getting the remastered version worked for me. I have Knights of the Old Republic, I have Half-Life 2, I have 2 different Dynasty Warriors games, which are actually 3 different Dynasty Warriors games. I have Dynasty Warriors 8 and Dynasty Warriors 8 Extreme Legends in one game, which is really good. I love Dynasty Warriors. And I also have the Dynasty Warriors 8 Empires game, which I also really like. I play Fortnite a lot, although I've been playing Fortnite less. Not because Epic Games has come out as, you know, literally abusing their employees to the point where it is detrimental to their health. I wish I could say that I'm so high-minded that that's the reason I haven't been playing it. But no, I've just been really, really busy lately, making videos and stuff. I'm trying to buckle down on it. I also, unsurprisingly, watch a lot of YouTube videos. Just a lot. Also, I do go out and participate in political actions whenever I can, especially when I'm invited to those actions. I have a playlist of some of those actions that I have been involved in, if you'd be interested in watching that. It includes a trip that I took to DC for the Unite the Right 2 rally, a group of people protesting the Unite the Right 2 rally. You know the one where only like 10 people showed up? That was a good time. Well, that was a good time. Fun fact, I had a pair of binoculars. In fact, I had this pair of binoculars when I was at DC in front of the White House. Me, and I gave this to like 3 other people. None of us could see anyone on the other side of the fucking barricades. We couldn't even see the white nationalists. That was fun. Ivan Solis, call it? I'm going to assume that it's pronounced Solis. Ivan Solis asks, hey, do you know if Vash is giving you a shout-out? I think his audience might be interested in your content, and I'm thinking of spamming him until he mentions you, unless you two have already been in touch. So I have sent messages to Vash on Discord, and he has responded to them. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we've spoken, As in, we haven't spoken about anything specific, but... And even besides that, I'd like to make a personal request that you do not pester people like that. Like, speaking of my capacity as someone who makes really basic videos on YouTube, making videos on YouTube is hard. It's not just as easy as pointing a camera at a person and, you know, like, blah, 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 blah. You have to edit, you have to fucking know what you're talking about, you have to do research. And anytime you have someone sending you something like that, anytime you have someone pestering you about something, you're going to have to take time that you could be using writing a script or editing a video together or doing something for your audience. You're going to have to take time out of that to check out this thing. And generally speaking, I don't have this problem a lot because, again, I don't have like a super active audience yet. But my experience being a mod on places where people have done that is that it stokes resentment. It's not just that I don't want Vash, or indeed anyone, to be resentful of me. I don't want anyone to be resentful of you either. Something I would recommend, again in my capacity as someone who is a mod, is to share my content with Vash's community. Maybe then he would be more organically inclined to talk about it. I'm pretty sure that's how Vash came to talk to Re-Education and Non-Compete, who were talking on and off about going on Vash's stream and talking to him about stuff. Which would be super cool, by the way. Non-Compete and Erins are good people. American and Erins are both really good people and deserve support. But yeah, don't bug Vash, bug Vash's audience. And just, in general, sharing content of anyone who you super duper like, who you think is making good points, is always something that you want to do. Not just with my channel, but with any channel that you think needs more subscribers. And just don't bug people unless it's fucking super duper important. Unless it's directly related to fucking stuff that they do. I don't know. I don't want to come off as ungrateful, but, like, I have an understanding of how difficult it can be to make videos like this, and like I'm just looking out for you, or I'm trying to look out for you, and everyone else involved in the thing that you're talking about. I hope that didn't sound too condescending, and I'm very sorry if it did. An anonymous user on Curious Cat asks, what is your opinion on anti-psychiatry? So I have certain very specific grievances with psychiatry as a profession. Both general grievances about how it's practiced and certain patterns that people look for that maybe they shouldn't be, and certain very personal grievances that maybe if you butter me up enough I might talk about someday. But if I have any grievances with psychiatry, it is with how it is practiced. It is not with psychiatry as a discipline. And my experience with people who have grievances with psychiatry as a discipline, people who are anti-psychiatry, as you're describing, are people who are deliberately and specifically looking to take advantage of people who are not mentally well. You have your cult leaders, you have Scientologists, you have fucking people who are looking to be in abusive relationships, or you looking to be the abusers, predators, if you would. And it makes me sick. Those people make me sick. If I see someone asking me about Scientology, I'm gonna lay them out. So yeah. That's my answer about anti-psychiatry. It makes me fucking sick. Queercore Central, Alex the Ancom Squirrel, says, I'm so sorry that you've read Atlas Shrugged multiple times. You're not as sorry as I am. Not only did I read Atlas Shrugged 3 times, but I read this copy of Atlas Shrugged 3 times. It was upside down. This copy of Atlas Shrugged. I still have it. It's on my bookshelf up here because, as you can see, the covers are torn off. But, like, this thing is old. This thing is older than I am. My mother nicked this from the Rockford College Library back in 1987, along with, this copy of Dangerous Visions, which I have also read. This is good. This is, if you're a fan of science fiction, make sure that you fucking read this. This is incredible. It's cynical as fuck, but it's incredible. But yeah, the story behind that is, I first read it when I was a junior in high school, and I was just starting to go back to regular school. I had a teacher who said that it was one of the best books they ever read, and they had modeled their life around it. Go figure. And incidentally, as I was reading that, there was a counselor who found out about that, and pointed me in the direction of other similar books, such as, well, I say similar, such as 1984, and Candide by Voluntary is one that I read, that had an opposite message to the one in Atlas Shrugged. That one person, that one counselor, I can't even remember her name. She probably had a greater effect on me than most of the other people in that school. A positive effect. Yeah. It's just such a little thing, but it's very important, you know? The second time I read it, I was like 22 years old, and I was just looking to burn time because I wasn't employed, and I was living in this tiny little town where everyone fucking hated me, and just, I needed something to do, or I would go fucking insane. Third time I read it was right around the time Gamergate was getting started, and I had heard people talking about how the word would be problematic, the book was, and I wanted to see for myself if it was as bad as it was. And it wasn't as bad as people said it was. It was actually significantly worse. And that is what I tell people whenever they bring up the book and how bad it is. Atlas Shrugged is not as bad as you have heard. It is actually significantly worse. I would rate the book 0 out of 10. No score. This is not a book that you toss aside lightly. It is a book that you throw with great force into a fire. An anonymous user on Curious Cat asks, do you have any advice for talking in front of a camera? I want to try making videos of my own, but when I watched my first recording, I realized how awkward and uncomfortable I was. I was very awkward and uncomfortable in front of a camera at first, too. You get over that with practice. So, you practice a lot. And not necessarily in front of a camera. You can talk in front of a mirror, or you can talk to, like, people who are watching you with an active audience. Talking with an active audience is actually significantly better for getting better quickly than just talking in front of a camera. Although if you're talking in front of a camera, you can review it and see how you improve yourself. There are different ways of going about this. But my advice is just keep practicing. You're not going to be good at first, you're going to suck at first, but sucking at something is the first step to being great at something. An anonymous user on Curious Cat asks, do you like black metal? If so, what are some of your favorite albums? Some albums with super gross sound wrecks? I've not been exposed to enough black metal to know definitively whether or not I like it, but what I have been exposed to, I don't like. It sounds like fucking industrial noise, and that's not my thing. If it's your thing, that's fine. You do you. By all means, I'm not going to make someone feel bad for liking something, unless that something is innocence of Muslims. But it's not something, from what I've experienced, that I enjoy, that I appreciate. Also, thoughts on why there are so many fash scum in extreme and obscure genres of music, though this could be wrong impression on my side. Is it? Anyway, your channel is great and I wish you the best, comrade. So I know exactly why this is, and this is because fascists get kicked out of everywhere else, so they have to go to marginalized communities. This actually creates a really nasty feedback loop. What happens is that the fascists go to people who are marginalized and spread their ideology in those marginalized spaces. And the people in those communities realize who the fascists are and kick the fascists out, and in the process, more fascists get made. And those fascists, both the old fascists and the newly recruited fascists, go into even more obscure, even more marginalized communities, and recruit more fascists. It's a really nasty cycle with a really nasty perpetuation mechanism, but you keep it from happening by being as inclusive as you can. That's why the left is inclusive, because that's the best way to get rid of fucking fascists, by inviting people in. At least that's what I think. There might be scientific data proving something else, I don't know. If there is, let me know about it, by all means. Rumen Kostov asks, I assume, political ideology. I am an anarchist. Did you miss the red and black thing? Or the other red and black thing? Did you miss all the times where I've stated that I'm an anarchist? If you're talking about certain specific political hot-button issues, then, like, I could talk to you about half an hour about my nuanced views on fucking abortion or fucking freedom of speech. I made a video about freedom of speech just last week, as a matter of fact. I've only really been able to boil down one talking point that I have, and that is that I think you solve the problem of gun violence by making the fist more dangerous than the gun. And I know some of you know that, and why did none of you ask me about that? Laura was here, asks, isn't lumping together eco-anarchism and anarcho-primitivism misleading? Aren't they different? It's my understanding that anarcho-primitivists want to take our technology back to before the agricultural revolution, and eco, or green anarchists, simply focus on environmental issues. Animal liberation is one of them. I don't mean to be nitpicky or anything, and I know this has nothing to do with the main point of the video. So that's not exactly nitpicky, and you're right to say that conflating those two positions is a little bit fallacious, but there's some context here. In the video I was talking about, I think that the video was, fake anarchist capitalists do not understand anarchism. I was talking about different branches of anarchism and how they apply anarchist principles. Specifically, I was saying that anarcho-primitivists and eco-anarchists apply anarchist principles to certain specific things, like animal liberation, like the use of medicine and the use of agriculture, for example, in very similar ways. They don't come to the same conclusions. At least in my experience, they don't. You don't have a whole lot of anarcho-primitivists because they're bonkers. The conclusions they come to are incongruent with most anarchist ideology. At least any anarchist ideology that is concerned with people's health and well-being. But they approach the same things with the same sort of means. They come to completely different conclusions, but they have the same sort of trajectory, if that makes any sense. Context is vital. Bemundalak asks, favorite fiction book? Okay, so if we're talking specifically about one book, a single fiction book that's like my favorite, then that would be The Stand by Stephen King. I have a copy right here of the unabridged, the complete and uncut Stephen King's The Stand right here. I read this when I was like 14. Really had an impact on me. There is this thread in Stephen King's work, an ideological thread, that people are naturally good. And he demonstrates this by having people who are good just naturally be good. Having most people just naturally be good. And having evil or wickedness be an outside force that is actively corrupting them and actively subverting the way that they make decisions for themselves. This isn't just in this book with people like Randall Flagg. It's also in The Dark Tower with the Crimson King. It's also in It with Pennywise. There's a quote from the fourth Dark Tower book where someone's talking about the choices that people make, how people make decisions. They can choose to do something, they can choose to do nothing, or they can choose not to make a decision and to let someone else do it for them. And the worst of those is to let someone else make a choice for you. Because the sort of person who's going to make a choice for you when you need to make a choice for yourself is going to be a very evil person. Typically. At least in these books. Now, if we're talking about book series, then I would have to say that my favorite book series is the Shannara series, which is something that I could talk to you about for ages. It has certain very specific thematic things. The wizard characters in the Shannara series are called druids, and the druids in the Shannara series consistently fucking hate people. They hate mankind as a whole. And that's kind of troubling in, like, the narrative of the story, because these are the most powerful people in the setting. Like, the main druid, the druid in the first 3 books, and later in a 4th book, a guy named Alanon. He's a fucking contemptuous git. He's just a nasty, nasty person. Brutal misanthrope. He hates people. He, like... Okay, I'm gonna spoil some stuff, but, like, the druids aren't, like, druids as we would think of them. They're not nature worshippers. The druids are scientists, and they named themselves druids to... It's sort of an in-joke. They're an archaic sort of group. Science in Shannara is to their world as magic was to our world. Shannara is said, like, hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years in the future, after, like, 2 nuclear wars. And the druids are the last people in the setting who have any vestige of scientific knowledge. And frequently the druids say, no, mankind does not deserve the knowledge that we have, they're just gonna bomb themselves back to Kingdom Come. And the trick that the writer, Terry Brooks, pulls is that he consistently, repeatedly, and reliably in the narrative proves the druids wrong. Every time the druids need humanity to step up, get their fucking act together, and fight off whatever threat there is this week, not only do they do it, but they do it with aplomb. With one exception, and even that one exception is kind of mitigated by other factors. Every time the druids need someone to step up, somebody steps the fuck up. More often than not, a bunch of people step the fuck up and knock the thing out of the park. Like, Alanon hates humanity, but Alanon dies kicking and screaming. He's literally dragged into hell. They have to grab him and drag him into hell because he won't die on his own. Because it is his job to protect humanity, and he knows that he has to do that. Also, he gets disemboweled and his arm gets chopped off. Alanon does not die a good death. If I can stretch the definition of book a little, there is a specific story in this book, Reeve the Just and Other Tales, called The Killing Stroke, which was one of my dad's favorite stories and which is one of my favorite stories. And, like, I cannot inform you how important it is to my development as a person, to my moral development, this story is. Not just because I read it and I was like, I understand everything in this story in a certain very specific way, but because my dad also understood it in a very specific way and taught that to me as a child. The story itself is, like, half of it is about these magic martial artists and, like, the different martial arts that they use and how that speaks to their characters and how it doesn't speak to their characters in some capacity. And the other half is about these magic users and how the values that they espouse aren't necessarily the values that they hold. And, like, how you can't judge someone by how, not just how they appear, but how other people choose to value them. How you can't appraise someone just based on how they are understood to exist in the world. That's something, again, because of my crappy fucking childhood, that if I were to describe it to you, it would stretch the limits of credulity. It's something that speaks very personally to me. And that appears to be everything that everyone asked me. Thank you for submitting all of your questions. I hope that I answered them adequately. Let's get to the second part of this video, where I point you in the direction of some people that you should be watching. So I want to set some ground rules here when I'm talking about recommending people that you watch. I'm going to try to avoid, with a couple of exceptions, I'm going to try and avoid recommending people who have more than, say, 10,000 subscribers, because I'm trying to recommend smaller channels, because it was ultimately these same smaller channels that got me up to where I am now. Also, like, everyone knows ContraPoints, everyone knows H-Bomber Guy, everyone knows Dan Olson, that's Folding Ideas, everyone knows, like, 3 Arrows. These are people who are very popular, and I'm not going to tell you to go watch people who are very popular because I'm assuming that you're already doing that. Again, I'm going to make a couple of exceptions to this, in both cases, for a very specific reason. Again, I'm going to make at least 2 exceptions to this, both for one very specific reason, but I'm going to try and stay with people who have less than 10,000 subscribers, because they're the people that need the most support. So the first person that I'm going to recommend to you is Re-Education, Erins' channel. A lot of you probably came from Erins' channel. Statistically, about half of you did. But for the half of you that aren't aware of Erin, he does videos almost every day. He does video topics about anarchism. He just did a video about cancel culture and how it's very toxic and how it's bad. I have a specific take on that I've been working on for a while. It's just not wholly baked yet. Erin does good work, and he does good work in a very specific way. It's easily relatable, it's easy to understand. If you want to know not just how to easily relate anarchist ideas and communist ideas, but how to relate them to other people, Erin's your go-to guy. Right now, he has just under 9K subscribers. He's good people. He deserves more than that. And the next suggestion I would make is the Christopher Sabo show. Chris makes videos about anarchism, political videos sometimes. Chris also has a series of videos called The Christopher Sabo Show, where Chris talks about media and kind of lampoons on it. It's entertaining. Chris currently has 1.4K subscribers. Chris is a great person. They deserve more subscribers than that. Go follow them. The next recommendation I would make is someone called Pamphleteer, who I think is best described as like Sean, but as an ogre instead of a disembodied skull. Pamphleteer does very analytical, very fact-oriented videos about very specific things. Like, you can see these 2 videos here are about information control. There's one about IQ. There are other videos about the political compass. He talks for an hour and a half about Nier Automata and how great it is, which is not nearly long enough. Right now, Pamphleteer has 635 subscribers. Pamphleteer is great and deserves more subscribers than that. Go subscribe to them. They're great. My next recommendation is The People's Bayonet. They do videos about media analysis and how to better do media analysis. They're very informative. Again, this is someone who has a very fact-oriented approach, but they do a very good job of contextualizing that information that they have. Like, an excellent job of contextualizing that information. It's not just spamming figures at you. It's very easy to understand, very easy to absorb. Right now, they have 1.3K subscribers. They deserve more than that. Go watch them, and if they're your thing, go subscribe to them. Antisocial Media is one of my favorite people on YouTube. Full stop. I've been paying attention to them for literally years. And not only do they do content that is very funny, but they also do long analyses of sometimes very specific people. There's one here on Carl and all the goofs that he has had in his election campaign so far. There was one on Morrissey, if I recall correctly. I can't seem to find it yet. But yeah, this person, Antisocial Media, is great, and they've been around for a long time, and like he's recently been talking about how stressful it is to not have as much recognition as he would like. So he has 3.4K subscribers. Go over to his channel, go check out his stuff. If it's something you like, subscribe to it. It's good stuff. I think it's good stuff. He's one of my favorite people on YouTube. PD Morin is an up-and-coming YouTube person who talks about political stuff. Very political stuff. Like the last few videos that he's done more specifically about the context and rationale behind decriminalizing most drugs. Marijuana specifically, but most drugs was the thing that I got. That's a position I generally agree with. But he brought some good stuff to the table. Right now he has 2.1k subscribers. Go check out his stuff. If it's something that's up your alley, maybe subscribe to his channel. Leftist Tech Support is someone who has helped me personally with my audio stuff, and also they make videos about things. They have a very informative video over here about crypto-Nazis and PewDiePie, and they're working on some other things. In the meantime, they have fucking shitposts, which are great. So I know that they're going to make more stuff in the future. They have some private stuff that is them working on that stuff, but so just checking them out isn't going to quite give you enough context to know if you'd like them or not, but if you like this video about PewDiePie, then that's the sort of stuff that they're planning on making in future, and that's, if you like that, subscribe to their channel. They have 1.1k viewers right now. Maybe we can bump that up a bit. BlackGoat666 is someone who I've been aware of for a couple of years now. They've been doing very fact-driven things. They recently did a pair of videos about IQ that were really good, that were really informative. Right now they have 1.4k subscribers. Maybe go and check them out. Not just their IQ videos. They have other videos about, there's one that I really liked. Oh, the one about Kanye West and Dilbert. That, it's about self-help, and it's just a blast to go through. I really liked that one. Kirkridge. Kirkridge explains EU politics, or specifically politics in England, and just as enthusiastic and energetic a way as you possibly can. He's definitely a lefty guy. Maybe he's a little bit too center-left for, like, I don't think he's a radical guy, but he's energetic and he's fun, and for someone who doesn't live in England, he is super informative. He inexcusably has 299 subscribers. If you have any interest in the politics of the UK, or in England, or Great Britain as a whole, he also talks about the EU sometimes, check this person out. It's good stuff. It's fun, if nothing else. Mia Mulder is a Swedish YouTuber who I've seen around and was recently briefly mentioned in Oliver Thorne's, that's Philosophy Tube's, sex work video. They have 9.9 thousand subscribers, so like they're the most that I'm going to recommend outside of the two very specific people who I'm going to recommend at the end. Check their stuff out. Very fact-driven, very informative. And it's good stuff to know. Notes from the Void is an agender person, I think, who talks about political stuff through the lens of being sort of agendered. I think that they're interesting. I found them on Thought Slime server, and you might think that they're interesting too. Right now they have 41 subscribers. Go and check them out. If that's the sort of stuff that's up your valley, subscribe to them. The Bronx Blogger is someone else who's been around for fucking years and who's not really gotten a whole lot of recognition. He does videos, he has a very specific format where he presents the thing that he's responding to before he responds to it at great length. Most of it is him just talking in front of a camera, but he's very informed, he's very intelligent, and unfortunately he only has 1.4k subscribers. Maybe check out his stuff, see if it's something that you enjoy. It's a little dry, a little bit academic, but it's very informative. He's a very informed person. The Moondalak is someone who has just restarted their channel, and to understand, to focus on a certain specific kind of essay. They make video essays about things. They have videos about, they focus on anarchism. They look at things through an anarchist lens, which is something that I appreciate. It is pertinent to my interests. Right now they have 2.3 thousand subscribers. Go check out the channel. If it's something that you think appeals to you, then go check it out. The last two people that I'm going to recommend are Radical Reviewer and Kevin Logan. Radical Reviewer has 5.8 thousand viewers. Go check out Radical Reviewer. He does reviews of books and he very frequently features other people to talk about the thing that he's talking about. That's really the most valuable thing. I've found more than a few people who I'm talking about right now through Radical Reviewer. Also, he's a dog. He's a dog who wears a vest and he reads books. How do you not like that? Also, Kevin Logan is someone who will frequently feature other people on the left who've been marginalized in that they have had videos taken down, or just because he likes them. I found a lot of people who I follow on YouTube now through Kevin Logan. And he's like someone who's... I want to say that he's important to the community. I personally consider him to be very important to the leftist community on YouTube, but other people might have a different opinion. Radical Reviewer is definitely important in that way. And both of them, you should subscribe to both of them, not just because they make good content, but because they make good content and are inclusive of other people. So yeah, that's my 1,000 subscriber special. I think I'm going to do the next one when I get, like, 10,000 subscribers. That's the plan. So look forward to that. And share this video and the next video, which again is going to be about how fake anarchist capitalists don't understand logic, anywhere you think that people would appreciate it. That's how this channel gets bigger. It doesn't get bigger unless you share it with people. No channel gets bigger unless you share it with other people. That's vital to growing on YouTube. You want people on the left to get bigger? You share their videos with other people who you think are going to like them. That's true of anyone, not just me. So yeah, I think that's it. Until we get there, take care of yourselves, alright?